Doctors declared the billionaire's son dead. The machines went silent, and his parents were already saying goodbye. But then a homeless boy rushed in, looked at the doctors and said, "You're wrong. What happened next?" No one in that room will ever forget. The hospital room fell silent. Machines stopped beeping. Doctors stepped back. "It's over," one of them whispered. A billionaire's only son had just been declared dead. Tears filled the room. His parents collapsed in grief. Nurses looked away. Hope was gone, but just outside the hospital, a homeless boy stood watching, and what he did next, no one could have imagined. The hallway outside was filled with chaos, but around the boy, everything felt strangely still. People rushed past him, nurses carrying equipment, relatives crying, doctors speaking in hushed, urgent tones, but he didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the glass window of that room. Inside, he saw a mother shaking her son's lifeless body, begging him to wake up. The father stood frozen, his face pale, his world clearly shattered in seconds. The boy swallowed hard. He had seen that pain before. Not in a hospital this big. Not with rich people or expensive machines, but on a cold night, on a broken street, when his own little sister had stopped breathing in his arms. Back then, no doctors came. No machines tried to save her. And no one gave him a second chance. A faint memory flashed in his mind, something he had done instinctively that night. Something that almost brought her back. His heart started racing. What if? He whispered under his breath. He took a step closer to the door. Then another. Security guards stood nearby. People were watching. He didn't belong here. His torn clothes, dusty face, and bare feet made that clear. But something inside him refused to let him walk away. Not this time. Not again. He clenched his fists, took a deep breath, and before fear could stop him, he ran toward the hospital room. His name was Armin. He had no home, no family, no money. Every day, he survived by collecting leftovers and sleeping on cold streets. But despite his struggles, Armin had something rare, a kind heart. That day, he had wandered near the hospital, hoping to find food. That's when he saw the chaos. Crying, shouting, panic through the glass. He noticed the lifeless boy on the hospital bed. Something felt wrong. "I've seen this before," Armin whispered to himself. Years ago, his little sister had collapsed the same way. People thought she was gone too, but Armin remembered something important. Something no one else seemed to notice. He stepped closer to the glass, his small fingers pressing against it as his eyes scanned every detail inside the room. The doctors had stopped trying. That was the first thing he noticed. They had stepped back too soon. Just like the people had done that night with his sister. Armin's breathing grew heavier. He remembered how cold her hands had felt. How everyone had said, "She's gone," without even trying long enough. But he hadn't believed them. He had cried, shouted, begged, and then, without knowing what he was doing, he had started pressing on her chest, calling her name again and again. For a moment, just a moment, she had gasped. It wasn't enough to save her, but it was enough to make Armin believe something very important. Sometimes people give up too early. His eyes snapped back to the boy in the hospital bed. The machines were silent. The room was still. But Armin noticed something small, something almost invisible. A tiny movement, or maybe a feeling. "I know he's not gone," Armin said softly, his voice trembling but certain. His heart began to pound loudly in his chest. No one else seemed to see it. No one else believed it. But Armin did, and this time, he wasn't going to stand there and watch. Not again. Without thinking twice, Armin rushed inside. "Stop. You can't go in there," a nurse shouted, but he didn't stop. "Please, just give me 1 minute," Armin begged. The doctors were shocked. Security moved toward him, but the boy's desperate voice made everyone pause. "His heart isn't gone. You just missed it," Armin said, breathing heavily. The doctors exchanged confused looks. "What are you talking about?" one asked. Armin ran to the bed. "Trust me, please." For a second, no one moved. Then the billionaire father, broken and hopeless, whispered, "Let him try." The room froze. Even the guards hesitated, unsure whether to pull the boy away or obey the father's quiet command. Armin stepped closer to the bed, his small hands trembling not from fear, but from urgency. Up close, the boy looked even more fragile, pale, still, silent, too silent. Armin swallowed hard, his mind racing with memories he wished he could forget. "Don't leave him like this," he said softly, almost to himself. A doctor stepped forward. "This is not a game, kid. We've done everything we could." Armin shook his head. "No, not everything. There was something in his voice, something raw and real, that made the room fall quiet again. The billionaire father looked at him, eyes filled with pain, but also a flicker of desperate hope. If there's even a chance, he said, his voice breaking. We have nothing left to lose. The doctors hesitated. Years of training told them this was pointless, but something about the moment, about this boy, didn't feel ordinary. Step back, one of them finally said. Armin climbed onto the small stool beside the bed. He looked at the boy's face, then closed his eyes for a brief second, as if gathering strength. Please, he whispered. Then he placed his hands on the boy's chest and began. Armin quickly placed his small hands on the boy's chest. He started pressing slow, steady, focused. Come on. Don't give up, he whispered. Seconds felt like hours. Everyone held their breath. Nothing, still nothing. Then suddenly beep, a faint sound. A monitor flickered. Wait, what? A doctor shouted. Another beep, then another. The heart was beating again. The room exploded in shock. Impossible, one doctor said. The boy gasped for air. He was alive. The billionaire mother burst into tears. Doctors rushed back in, now working with urgency, but none of them could believe what just happened. A homeless boy had done what trained professionals could not. The silence shattered into chaos. Pulse is back, a nurse yelled, rushing to check the monitors. Get oxygen now. Move, another doctor shouted. Snapping out of disbelief, Armin didn't stop immediately. He kept pressing, his face tight with concentration, as if he was afraid the miracle might slip away if he let go too soon. Come on, stay with us, he whispered again. The machines began to light up, numbers rising, lines moving, life returning. The doctors quickly took over, guiding Armin aside, but their eyes kept drifting back to him, filled with confusion and awe. How did he? One of them murmured under his breath. The boy on the bed coughed weakly, his chest rising unevenly as air rushed back into his lungs. That single sound broke whatever control the mother had left. She collapsed beside the bed, crying uncontrollably. My son, my son. The father stood frozen, staring at the monitor as if afraid it might stop again if he blinked. But it did. In single quotes. It kept beating, strong, steady, real, across the room. Armin slowly stepped back, his hands shaking now, not from effort, but from the weight of what had just happened. For the first time, he looked unsure. As if even he couldn't fully believe it. But one thing was certain. This time, he hadn't been too late. Hours later, the boy was stable. The hospital was no longer silent. It was filled with disbelief and whispers of a miracle. The billionaire, Mr. Khan, searched for Armin. He found him sitting quietly outside, as if nothing had happened. Why did you help us? Mr. Khan asked. Armin shrugged. Because no one helped my sister. Those words hit harder than anything. Mr. Khan sat beside him, silent for a moment. Then he said something that would change both their lives forever. From today, you are not alone anymore. Days turned into weeks. Armin was given a home, clean clothes, food, education, but more importantly, a family. Mr. Khan didn't just reward him, he adopted him. Years later, Armin stood beside the same boy he saved, now his brother, and together, they built something bigger than wealth. They built hope, because sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they're just a boy with nothing, who refuses to give up on someone else. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, Mr. Khan returned to the hospital early, this time not as a desperate father, but as a man searching for purpose. He found Armin in the same spot, curled up on a bench, fast asleep. For a moment, he simply stood there, looking at the boy who had given his family a second chance, a boy the world had ignored. Gently, he placed his coat over Armin. When Armin woke up, confused and startled, Mr. Khan smiled for the first time in days. Come with me, he said softly. At first, Armin hesitated. Life had taught him not to trust promises, but something in Mr. Khan's eyes felt different. Real. The days that followed felt like a dream Armin was afraid to believe. A warm bed, fresh food, people who spoke kindly instead of shouting, a room of his own, and slowly, the fear inside him began to fade. Meanwhile, the boy he saved recovered faster than anyone expected. Doctors called it a miracle, but Mr. Khan knew the truth. It wasn't luck. It was courage. Years later, Armin didn't just grow up, he rose. He studied, learned, and chose a path where he could save others, just like he once had, together with his brother. He helped build hospitals for those who couldn't afford them, because Armin never forgot where he came from, and he made sure no child would ever be left helpless again. If this story moved you, remember, real heroes don't need power or money, just courage. One small act can change your life forever. So never ignore the chance to help someone. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire.